time to dive into the For FF's Sake podcast. FF's Sake podcast. The place for your weekly dose of fantasy football advice, breakdown, and debate. Redraft, Dynasty, sleepers, and buy or sell candidates. It all gets discussed right here. Now, let's go to your hosts, two guys that say the other is an idiot. Ian Steele and Evan Harris.
Welcome into For FF's Sake. Evan Harris here, joined by none other than McJammar. How do I say this? It's Marky Mark. It's MC Jamar.
It's McJammar is the way I say it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And we don't have Ian. This is our first episode in quite a while, actually. I've been doing some guest spots on some podcasts, but I wanted to jump in and just start our recording cycle again. Ian will be joining us soon. Ian has some family stuff going on and all good stuff, but really busy. So, but welcome to Mark, and glad to be back. This was actually an idea Mark came to me with for a show idea, and I thought, man, that's a great one. Let's record it sooner rather than later, because we are definitely in rookie fever and panic season, and the theme of this show is going to be, should we panic? Mark, this was your idea, so tell me a little bit more about kind of what we're going to talk about tonight.
Well, just some of the landing spots for the rookies, and I've seen some obituaries written for good guys, kind of early obituaries on some guys, and I felt like there was some panic with the rookies coming in and the guys that are on the roster, and thinking that there's no reason they can't still be relevant in the NFL. So we'll talk about that in a little more detail, and see what we think. We'll give our opinions on that. So seemed like a fun show to me when I started seeing the panic tweets.
So I started reading through some of these names that we had put on a docket here, and we're going to trigger some people. Okay. If you're watching this and you are sensitive to be triggered, you just stop watching. I normally don't tell people that, but we're going to hurt some feelings. We're probably also going to pump you up a little bit, make you beat your chest and say, that's right, I knew I was right. So we're gonna talk on some of these guys. I have some opinions on some of them, and I have some very passionate opinions on it. And that's what fantasy football is about. So let's jump right into it. And the first name on this one is probably near and dear to my heart in terms of my actual football fandom. As we talk about A.J. Brown, and I'm not going to lie, Mark, we couldn't have recorded this a day or two after the draft because my biasness of being a Titans fan would have just spilled all over it. But A.J. Brown going to the Eagles, they traded the first for him, but we're not really talking about A.J. Brown as much as we're going to talk about Devontae Smith and his value. This is a guy that if you had him going into the draft, you were holding on to a first, maybe two. I know there's a guy in a league that we're both in that wanted 2 first-round picks for him, and I get it to an extent. I didn't necessarily value him that high, but there were some people that did. And now he's not the wide receiver 1 in a run-first offense. He's possibly the wide receiver 2. The obituaries are out there. I like how you use that phrasing. But before I go into some of my thoughts on him, where do you stand on this? Are you out on Devontae Smith, or do you still love the talent?
Still love the talent. What was he? Consensus top 10 in rookie drafts last year, and going, earlier than 10. 6, 7, somewhere in there maybe.
Wide receiver 2 for a lot of people last year.
Yeah, very true, very true. And it's only been a year, and I think he's still got a lot of talent. And I think we're panicking a little bit too early. I think everybody's giving it to A.J. Brown. The two things I've seen that are. One is that, Smith's toast, man, sell Smith, which I don't believe, because I feel like with defenses concentrating on AJ, don't you think Devontae is going to be even more open than he was last year? That's my biggest take on it, is I feel like it helps him, if anything. I have seen a lot of people saying now the Eagles are going to be passing a lot more. That's a narrative, man. They pass about 25 times a game. Until we see them increase that, we have to kind of go with that.
I think they call more pass plays. Jalen Hurts just don't always pass it.
Well, true, very true. So yeah, I think that that could be part of it too. So yeah, I don't think they'll pass much more. And until we see that, I don't think we can go down that rabbit hole. But I think there's enough to go around for those two. I think it hurts maybe some of the other guys more, like Quez Watkins and Jalen Reagor. But I think those two can feast in this offense, and I think it's going to help Devontae Smith really.
So I'm in a little bit of a weird place here, Mark. I'm going to be honest with you. This is a place normally if Ian was on, I would just go with whatever he said. I would do the opposite and argue that statement because I'm kind of wishy-washy on this. I'm kind of back and forth. So here's how I broke this down in my mind, okay? A.J. Brown's highest success rate was against man coverage playing for the Titans. Jalen Hurts' highest success rate passing the football was when he passed against man coverage. So that in itself already, they're breakfast buddies, right? That's a thing. They're best friends. They've been friends for a long time, dating back to when Hurts tried to recruit A.J. Brown to Alabama. So there's some history here as well. I do think that A.J. Brown is going to be the number one in that offense. However, that doesn't mean Devontae Smith can't eat. So one of the things that I looked at when I was breaking this down was reception perception. Go check it out. You can look them up on Twitter. They have a website as well. But it showed how Devontae Smith did really well against off coverage and how he did good against zone coverage. So now I think this is a little bit of a pick your poison. I think A.J. Brown's going to force defenses to back off into some zone. And I think that's going to give Devontae Smith an opportunity to eat in some of that zone. He's a very smart receiver. One other thing is, as we talk about how AJ can help Devontae, because I do think that's going to be something. He's going to, as I already mentioned, force teams to play more zone. But Devontae Smith, if you look at him in college, he was definitely the guy of that offense, but he was never the only guy. And last year, he was the only guy on the outside. Teams could bracket him, and that's hard for a receiver, especially a slender receiver like he was. He beats press coverage with his feet, not his physicality. So I think when you look at him this year, he's going to have better opportunities. I don't know about more opportunities, but he's going to get better opportunities. So I'm not per se out on Devontae Smith. The talent is still there. He's not Jalen Reagor. Sorry, people. He's not Denzel Mims. Sorry to some of you out there. But what I will say is this. If you were wanting to sell him, that ship has sailed. You better be a Devontae Smith truther because you're either holding him or you're trying to buy cheap. And I think that's kind of where it's at if we're just talking where his value is.
Yeah, that's a good point. His value may have gone down, but I think he can still have value.
So going on to our next guy here, it is a receiver as well. This one was really interesting. And Mark, I'll just be honest, I don't know how I feel about this one yet. I just drafted Garrett Wilson in a league, and we're talking, you hear me say Garrett Wilson, so you already know where I'm going with this. We're talking about Elijah Moore. I do not own any shares of Elijah Moore, and that wasn't for lack of trying. I tried to get him in a few leagues. Actually, I think I did in one and ended up trading him in the offseason on a contending team. But when I look at this, I'm still not sure what it does for Elijah Moore's value. What I do know is Garrett Wilson was my pre-draft wide receiver one. Post-draft, that's where I had him as well. I think he's the safest receiver in this draft. I think he's actually the second best route runner in this draft behind his teammate, Chris Olave.
Right.
But I think he's a more twitchy athlete than Olave was. And that may come to a shock to some people. I just think he had a little bit more of a burst. So when I look at Garrett Wilson, I think he has that opportunity to become more of a true one. And one thing that does scare me with Elijah Moore was when you look at his season last year, and it was just his rookie season, he was working with a rookie quarterback, but he never built that camaraderie or that connection with Zach Wilson. His best weeks last year, he had 3 weeks where he scored over 17 points. 2 of those weeks were when Zach Wilson was hurt on the bench. He had a 17-point outing with Zach Wilson in the lineup. And in that game, he had one really big busted play where he scored a touchdown, and that really was the bulk of his points. So I'm more worried about Elijah Moore meshing with Zach Wilson like he did mesh with Braxton Berrios down the stretch. But one thing about this drafting, if you will, is Elijah Moore will go more and stay more in that slot role that Berrios thrived in. And I think that could be good for Moore, but I'm just I don't really know. And for a guy that normally has a very strong opinion, my only opinion on this is if I want one receiver in that offense, it's Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, well, Garrett Wilson definitely. He's the Swiss Army knife guy. He's your motion guy, and you can line him up all over the formation, put him in motion, do a lot of things with him. Very versatile, very good route runner. So very much in agreement that Wilson is going to definitely be a top guy there. He should be, especially where they drafted him. Moore, he's a better boundary receiver than he gets credit for. He definitely he doesn't have to be pigeonholed in the slot. I just feel again like Moore is very good. I think he's probably a top 20 dynasty asset. I could get arguments from that, but I've seen other rankings where I'm seeing him in there, and I'm like, okay, I might be onto something. Not to panic too much on Elijah Moore. Now, of course, I have a share of him in the league, and so it may be hopeful thinking, wishful thinking, but he really is good. He was hurt while he was out and didn't get that rapport with Wilson. I'll give you that too. Then when he was back in, he was playing with Mike White and what's the other guy, Johnson, I think his name was. So, yeah. But he did well with those quarterbacks. So I want to see now, can we get them all a year together? Because like I said, I think he's a better boundary receiver than he gets credit for, and he's going to have times where he's open, and we know Wilson can chuck the ball. Zach Wilson, that is. And we got too many Wilsons going here now.
I've already named one of my Garrett Wilsons, Wilson to Wilson in the league. So
yeah,
it sounds like a 80s sitcom, don't it?
Yeah.
Wilson to Wilson. No. Yeah. If I have Elijah Moore, I don't think I'm selling at his current price, but I don't think I'm buying either. It kind of goes back to Devontae Smith, where actually I'd probably buy some Smith. I don't know that I'm buying Elijah Moore till I see, but I'm right there with you. I do think that he's I don't know if he's top 20, but I think he's up there in that range. Just off the top of my head, I'd want Elijah Moore over a guy like Jerry Jeudy, and that might ruffle some feathers. I think I like Elijah Moore maybe even better than Brandon Ayuk right now, which is another guy that some people are high on. So I'm not out on him by any stretch, but I am kind of curious, can he make that next step? I mean, he was coming out last year. He was, either a late first or early second round pick in rookie drafts. He was, I think, pick 33 or 34 in the NFL draft. Somebody's going to comment and say, no, you're wrong. He was 35, but I'm pretty sure.
I think he was a second rounder, right?
Yeah,
so
I think he was like one of the first picks of that second round. So
yeah.
He's like a second round plus, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I look at takes like this on people that are like, no, they have Garrett Wilson, that's the only thing they need. It's because no NFL offense has ever supported two good receivers, right?
Right.
That's kind of the first thing I think. If you're wanting Elijah Moore to be a wide receiver one, I don't know if you'll get there, but can he be a high level wide receiver two or very high level flex? Absolutely. And those are things that you need if you want to win a dynasty championship.
Yeah, and if there's guys, you mentioned Ayuk and Jeudy, and if guys are just bumping them up over him automatically, I'd trade one for the other at this point.
We'll make those swaps.
Yeah, I'll do that. No, I think that he's in that conversation with them, and I think he's got a little bit more upside at this point. So
for this next guy, I didn't even put any notes down. Because I already know how I feel about both of these players, and it's a double thumbs down. So This is one where I'm definitely going to ruffle some feathers. Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. No, thank you. I've been preaching. If you follow our 4FF's Sake Twitter page, I have been preaching sell Amon-Ra St. Brown. Before they signed DJ Chark, I was on there saying that. Before they drafted Jameson Williams, I was on there. If you go back and look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here because if you're doing any research, you're going to see this. Amon-Ra St. Brown broke out down the stretch and had a phenomenal end to the season, and I take nothing from him. But when we go to projecting moving forward, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with me that Amon-Ra St. Brown is not going to get 13 and 14 targets a game. It's probably not going to happen ever again unless there's a mass injury and they're tanking again like they were last year, which is a possibility, I guess, right? So when you look at his stretch of games, I think he had like a 6 or 7 game stretch where it was just ridiculous bonkers numbers. DeAndre Swift wasn't playing. TJ Hawkinson wasn't playing. His only competition for targets at that point was 2 Titans rejects who had been cut by the Tennessee Titans, which are obviously known for the receivers, right? So Josh Reynolds, who not necessarily trying to take anything away from him, and Khalif Raymond, 2 guys that nobody has on their fantasy football radar. So let's just start there. I was out on Amon-Ra St. Brown. So Jameson Williams didn't necessarily bury him in the hole anymore for me. He just already made me feel like I told you so moment. Jameson Williams is probably the more iffy take here that people could probably poke some more holes in. It's not that I don't believe Jameson Williams can be really good. I want to start with that. But my thing is, he played behind receivers at Ohio State that he couldn't beat out for targets. He couldn't really get a role on the field for. Transfers to Alabama, played against SEC defenses, not taking anything away from him there. But he wasn't drafted to Detroit to be a second fiddle guy. He was drafted to be the guy. And for a player who spent 4 years in college and was never the guy, that's really hard for me to believe. And you heard me say that if you're listening, and you probably thought, how is he not the guy at Alabama? Go look at the target share. John Mechie had 26.9% of that target share at Alabama. Again, I didn't write any notes on these. These are all things that I already strongly feel. So they're just like implanted into my mind here. 26.9%. Fact check me. John Mechie had that target share over Jameson Williams, and might not be the athlete Jameson Williams is. So what does that tell us? All we have to go off of is how these college coaches feel about certain players. Not that any player hasn't outperformed what they did in college, but I don't get the hype. I thought Jameson Williams had the college production and skill set to be a mid-second round pick in the NFL, and he went all the way up to the first. And I've seen him as high as, I think, 104 or 105 in rookie drafts. And to me, I think there's a big bust component, especially when you consider the thing he does best, running deep shots down the field. He has a noodle-armed quarterback to throw it to him in Jared Goff. So I can't add anything else to that. Mark, tell me why I'm wrong, or tell me why you agree with me.
No, I'm on board with most of what you said there, if not all of it. I think Amon was already a question mark because of the fact that, like you said, it was Hawkinson and Swift were out, and his target share went up. But their target shares were a lot higher before they went out, and you can't argue with those numbers at all. So he was one to me that was already iffy. I think he's good. He still did it. He did it in the pros with not the best quarterback in the league. So I'll give him credit for what he did there, but I do feel like those guys coming back in are going to take away the target share. Williams probably won't be there in the beginning of the season, but down the stretch, we might see Amon-Ra St. Brown fading a little bit behind those guys. They drafted him at number 12. So you're right. They drafted him to be a top guy. I had him a little further down too. Like in rookie drafts, I had several guys that had him. I had him targeted for late first, early second in rookie drafts. I think he's talented, but I think there's guys I had ahead of him I like better. But with that draft capital, they're like I said, they didn't bring him in to sit him behind Amon-Ra for sure. So I think him plus some other factors kind of puts Amon-Ra to kick him to the curb maybe, but we'll see. We'll see. I like the fact that they've got a lot of weapons, so they should be a lot more dynamic. Now they just, with Goff in there, it almost seems out of place to have that many weapons, and Goff thrown to him. But it's going to be tough to get a big target share in that offense.
So we need a moment of silence here for the true loser of all of this. And that's our boy Quintez Cephas.
Yeah.
Where's my fake lighter when I need it? I'm sorry. All right, moving on a little bit here. I want to talk about these next two guys in tandem. I'm going to let you start us off here. We're going to start with Rashaad Penny. How is his value affected by a player being drafted like Kenneth Walker in round 2?
Well, I think that, they signed him to a 1-year deal after, he was a first-round draft pick and hardly played. Certainly finished out the season well last year. And I don't think, they're the type that are loyal to their guys. So I don't think Kenneth Walker comes right in there and just takes everything away from Penny. I feel like it'll be a committee, and I think Penny is probably the better receiving back. And the thing about Walker that bothers me is all these people saying, well, he didn't catch the ball in college, but he can. It doesn't mean he can't. Again, it's a narrative. You're not looking at trends here. You're looking at a narrative of he can be. Well, he didn't do it at Wake Forest. He didn't do it at Michigan State. Oh, well, that was Michigan State's fault because they just don't throw the ball to their backs a lot. I mean, until he does it, man, we can't count on him being a 3-down back. So if anything, I feel like Penny's got the lead. I honestly think Carson could be done. I'm hearing a lot of rumblings about him not being able to get back on the field after that surgery. And that wouldn't surprise me at all. And it could be why Kenneth Walker is there. I think that they'll definitely lean on Penny to start. Walker's a little bit of insurance. I think if anything, the best Walker is going to be able to do is move into a committee, a 1A and 1B type of deal.
Mark, I'm glad that you're so much smarter than Ian, because our takes are just gelling right now. We're here. We're like, yes. Yeah, another good take, because I'm going to agree with you. That's Ian. He's going to like choke on his own spit as he's listening to all this. Kenneth Walker was a guy I was fading at his rookie draft capital. And I know you didn't go that far as to say, and I'm not saying he's going to be a bust, so I want to be particular with my words. But he was a guy that if I'm drafting a running back that high, I want to know that he's going to be the guy. And I don't know that he's going to be the guy in Seattle. One big reason I don't know that is because Seattle's proven they don't care what your draft capital is. You look at guys like Carson, DJ Dallas that have come in there, and there was that year they were a little bit of a committee. There was one other, Travis Homer. There it is.
Homer, yeah.
Travis Homer got some run with that offense. They don't care. They're going to put guys in that they think can help them win and win now. And I don't know if Kenneth Walker is going to get a big enough role to do that. I think Kenneth Walker's upside for this season is an RB2. I don't think he has RB1 upside. And for me, that pushed him later. I'm not saying completely out of the first round, but I think I would have taken other guys over him, especially at the receiver position, but even maybe one more at running back. And I won't dig too deep into that, but I had Rashaad White over him in my rankings, and that was a little spicy for some, but I thought White could be more of a complete back with the pass catching role and just his overall size and athleticism. So that, for me, Kenneth Walker is scary. If I have Rashaad Penny, I'm still comfortable holding Rashaad Penny. If you can buy low enough on Rashaad Penny, I'd do it, I think, because Penny proved last year when he was healthy, and he's proved that a couple times when he's healthy, knock on wood, right, that he can be that guy. And Pete Carroll strikes me as an I told you so kind of coach. And I think he doesn't want to let go of Rashaad Penny yet, because he wants to be like, I told you so. He was a first-round pick. Everybody was wrong. So
they're all like that, but he's definitely a whole lot like that.
Yeah. And I actually jumped one. So we're going to go on to the next guy. These are the two guys I want to do in tandem, but I did want to stop there on Walker. So next for us here is James Cook getting drafted in round 2. And how does that affect Singletary and Moss? I'm definitely going to go hard on my opinion on this one, Mark. So I'm going to let you kick us off here.
Okay. Well, I see James Cook being drafted in the first round of rookie drafts, and I feel like he may be, before it's all said and done, the most overdrafted rookie in the draft.
My golly. He's a genius, ladies and gentlemen, because he agrees. Anyways, keep going. We're good.
Yeah. He does not profile as a 3-down back. He's a very good pass catching back, undersized to be a workhorse. I really feel like it's going to be a big time committee there. I feel like Zach Moss will be the odd man out most likely. I think they lost confidence in him. He just hasn't shown enough. Singletary is he's done okay, but he's undersized as well. So it's like they got a bunch of, they got a couple of little bitty guys that can probably share the load. Singletary was targeted a lot more than you would think because the numbers weren't there, but he actually got a lot of targets. So I think James Cook was brought in because Devin Singletary wasn't getting it done as a pass catcher. Moss is not a guy that they want to have out there a lot. James Cook is going to be their pass catching back. That's my take on it. It's just going to be a big old committee. And those guys that drafted James Cook in the first round of the rookie draft thinking I've got an RB1 or 2, I think they're going to be disappointed. I really do.
Congratulations. You drafted Nyheim Hines or JD McKissick in the first round. Round of applause. Pat yourself on the back. That's the upside you're drafting. I do not get it. Again, that's the upside you're drafting. And so I co-manage in a league with a guy we both know, and he liked James Cook. He did. And we were talking about it. He goes, that's just what the league going to. Look at Gibson. No, Gibson was 6'1", 228 coming out, not 5'11", 190. So you talked about size. Let's go into that a little bit. So James Cook is the tallest running back now on their roster at 5'11", which is staggering. But he's the lightest running back on the roster, Mark, at 190 pounds. I think he ate a few bowls of ice cream before the weigh-in for the combine because he weighed 199, which is about 11 pounds heavier than he ever was listed at Georgia, which was interesting to me. Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about that size for a minute. Is he going to be the goal line back? No. Josh Allen is still the goal line back in that offense. And even if not, you look at some of their guys. Moss was 5'9", 220. Singletary was 5'7", 203. So just thicker built guys, even though they're shorter. Both of those, James Cook is by far the fastest of those 3 running backs, how he measures out. But the other 2 guys do have good burst. So that was interesting to me. So as I was thinking about this, James Cook really shut up in rookie drafts because of the landing spot, right? I would have been much more intrigued by a bigger body back going there because I would have been like, okay, this guy can get some of the work. I'm not worried about the pass catching role because tell me the last mobile quarterback that just passed the ball a ton to a running back. I asked somebody that question the other day and they told me Brian Westbrook. I was like, well, first off, Donovan McNabb wasn't really a mobile quarterback. Like he wasn't a rushing quarterback in the same avenue as Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Could he run? Yes, but he wasn't necessarily that guy. He definitely looked to throw first. So when I think about that, that was one big thing for me. I was like, I don't like this landing spot at all because Josh Allen is going to tuck the ball and run 5 yards or 20 instead of check it down. You did mention Singletary had a lot of targets. I would challenge that and go in and look at how many of those targets were throws in the dirt when the play broke down. How many of that was Singletary was in the flat, he gets credited with a target? Because if I go back and watch their games, I see a lot of that. I don't see a lot of, hey, he's open across the middle, throw it to him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that was another thing for me. I do think Cook can be used as a weapon. It's kind of interesting to me there. But again, I just don't see the touch upside. And so we're going to talk about touch for a minute. And I don't mean to bury James Cook. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I hope somebody listens to this and stops drafting him in the first round. That's what I hope for. So if I told you you could get 9.3 touches a game, let's say 9 touches a game from a running back, is that somebody you want to draft in the first round? Because that was his best season. His senior season, he averaged 9.3 touches a game, and they played teams in there. Yes, they played an SEC schedule, but don't forget Vanderbilt's in the SEC, and they did play Vanderbilt. They also played UAB and Charleston Southern, and he still never got more than, I think only there was a stat, only like 4 times in his entire collegiate career did he get more than 11 touches in a game, which is absurd. He was at Georgia for 4 years. If you take all of his years that he was there in 46 career games, I'm looking at my stats because I don't want to mess this one up. He averaged 5 rushing attempts per game. And you're like, well, he's a pass catching back, Evan. Okay. He averaged 6.45 total touches a game. I hope that he can become a flex for you if you're drafting him in the first round. That's all I got on that. And I'm going to lead us off on our next one because I'm so glad you put these in back-to-back categories. Because if you remember, Singletary, Mark, was a third-round pick. He was picked 74 overall, fairly high third-round pick. Moss, also a third-round pick. He was picked 86th overall. And, of course, James Cook was a second-round pick. In quotations, he was a very late second-round pick. He was picked 63.
Okay.
So I want you to remember that because everybody's telling us, don't worry about Singletary and Moss. They were third-rounders. Cook is a second. Okay. So as we go into our next category, and everybody knows I'm an Antonio Gibson truther, and we're going to talk about him because there was a third-round running back, Mark, and Brian Robinson. And unlike our previous third-round running backs we're talking about, everybody's saying, worry about Brian Robinson. He was drafted in the third round. Okay. What is Brian? Back up a little bit. You can already see it steaming off of me. Like it's coming out the ears, man.
Take a deep breath, man.
It's absolutely ludicrous to me. And I am a Gibson truther, and I'm not saying Brian Robinson is a bad prospect. But for the people that are saying that he is going to completely take this job from Antonio Gibson, that is a falsity. You are just spreading negativity into the atmosphere that I do not need in my life. Okay. First off, it's just not true, and you can't back it up by anything. So I've heard the takes of, well, Brian Robinson is going to be the goal line back. Okay. He's not as fast, not as quick, and not as big as Antonio Gibson. He measured in at 6'2". I wrote it down. He measured in at 6'2", 220. Antonio Gibson was 6 foot, 228. So he's definitely a bulkier big. Yes, Robinson's taller, but he's also lighter in that sense. He's a lighter back and leaner. Okay, so he's not a bigger back than Gibson. All right, well, does he catch the ball better? I dare you to try to make that argument with me. We'll talk about Gibson and pass catching for another time because it still don't make sense that he was a receiver in college and they just continue to keep throwing the ball to McKissick. It's just absurd. At the boiling point of all this, Antonio Gibson is bigger, faster, catches the ball better. He had a 99th, one more time, 99th percentile speed score for his size and speed. He ran a 4.3940. A guy that in back-to-back rookie seasons that some people drafted in the second, some people drafted in the third of their rookie drafts. He's at 1,000 yards, 44 plus catches, 10 plus total touchdowns, borderline RB1 if you're in a 12 team, RB2 if you're in a 10 team. I'll make sure to say that because Ian will be all over me if I don't. What more do you want from the guy? I think, and I do think this may be the first time we disagree, but I think Brian Robinson was drafted as insurance and not competition. And the floor is yours.
No, I think that this is when people are panicking on that. I don't think there's so much need for the panic. They profile much the same as the type of back, but you're exactly right that Antonio Gibson is a much better athlete. It's a little concerning to me that they may. I don't think they've lost confidence in him, but maybe are they worried about the injuries? He hasn't caught on the way that we think he should have or could have by now. So, there's a little something that just doesn't add up there. So I don't think that if it had been another back besides Robinson, maybe I'd be panicking a little more. But like I said, I looked at it and I was like, this is the same profile.
Yeah.
And he's not the athlete that this guy is. So maybe it's just to split touches a little bit more, but maybe take a little bit of the heat off of Antonio Gibson and spell him, for 10 touches a game, maybe 15 at the most, but I don't think there's any need for panic. I really agree with you that this is not a threat to Antonio Gibson. There's just that little thing that in the back of my mind that bugs me, that is there something else there that we don't know about the injuries? It seemed to be a little bit chronic there. I would say that's probably it. Just guessing, not that I know any inside information, but what else would it be? Because it did seem kind of odd there. And they fought hard to bring McKissick back. They could have let him walk, and they wanted to bring him back for some reason.
So to play devil's advocate a little bit, right? I can see the panic from the standpoint of they brought in a guy, they've made the comments of a committee backfield, they want a 1-2 punch. One thing I will, and of course Gibson has had some injuries. Now they've all been different. He's had a shin injury, he's had turf toe, both difficult things to get over. We never know at the end of the day what NFL teams know. You look at the Marquise Brown trade for Arizona, and you're wondering, how is he going to tie this in? Well, Arizona makes that trade because they already know about the Hopkins situation. A lot of times teams know about even suspensions months before they happen, and there's been a report out that they did know that, and that did factor into that trade. So when you look at stuff like that, we don't know. So I do think as a Gibson owner, you shouldn't be blind to the fact that you still need a handcuff. And I do think Jarrett Patterson is no longer the handcuff. Brian Robinson is. You can get him in the third round, which tends to be the going rate for a handcuff. It seems to be. So I think in some leagues, right? So I do think you try to grab him if you can. The only other thing I'll say about the McKissick piece of this, which is kind of interesting. So everybody likes to throw that up, but McKissick's basically on a 1-year deal where he's going to make maybe $2 million with incentives. His salary is actually only like $500,000, and then they have a potential out in the contract for next year. Mm-hmm. Who's to say that they don't want to move Gibson into more of that pass catching role and split some of his early down carries, which honestly would probably be a good thing for Gibson. I think getting him out in space and having that opportunity, he'd still have rushing opportunity. I mean, if you look at the opportunities McKissick got last year, he still had a lot of touches. If you give him a McKissick plus role, he's still going to be the numbers he's putting up now, maybe even better. And you give a lesser role to Brian Robinson next year. I think that's something they could have looked at. Also have to factor in McKissick did have a season-ending injury. How will he come back? They want to have a second back for that. They didn't have one before the draft. The last point I will make, and this isn't really a point, this is wishful thinking, to be completely honest. Last year, we were promised a CMC workload, Mark. Gibson, and I'm saying we as all of the Gibson owners, we were promised. Sure. They didn't do it. This offseason, they're saying, hey, we're going to do a committee, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're going to do. So maybe it's reverse psychology on the league, and they're going to give them a CMC workload this year. That's what I'm going with. That's my wishful thinking.
You do that. I'm going to bet the under, but you go ahead and do that.
So
keep on wishing.
I know we've been going for a little bit here. I do want to touch on a few more of these. Let's do some rapid fire on a few guys real quick, and then we'll settle back in. So rapid fire real quick on Mitchell Trubisky, whose replacement was drafted, to be honest, and Kenny Smallhands Pickett. You traded for a Kenny Pickett share today. I want to hear from you on this one.
I did trade for him. I think he can be good. He's the most pro-ready quarterback, and going at number 20 to Pittsburgh with that coaching staff, I think they'll make something out of Kenny Pickett there. I think Trubisky definitely take a step back there. I don't even know that he'll start this year. If Pickett's doing well enough in camp, I think it's going to be his job, and Trubisky's going to be the backup there.
Pickett You can do really, really good things by throwing 5-yard routes to Deontay Johnson and dropping it off to Najee Harris. Just keep doing that, and you can pass for 300 yards a game and 3 touchdowns. I mean, it can happen. So, no, I'm right there with you. When you look at Trubisky's contract, he $1 million salary, 2.6 signing bonus. His dead cap's only 5.25. So basically, they've already paid him over half of what his cap's going to be this year. They could cut him and not hurt they'd probably actually save money. I think they'd save 2-point-something million if they just cut him outright. So he's paid backup money. He's going to get paid more next year if he's still on the roster. And I think they may just hold on to him as a backup. So I'm right there with you on that one. George Pickens, we didn't talk about this one, right? Chase Claypool and George Pickens. Okay. Absolute savagery the Pittsburgh Steelers did with having Claypool announce who could be his replacement at the draft.
Yeah.
That was just absolute, that's Mike Tomlin going, yeah, what do you think about this? So when my only note I really put on this one was I did put that he's 38 pounds heavier, Claypool is, only 1 inch taller. It's also the final year of Deontay Johnson's contract, but my note that I put in bold is Claypool better get some act right.
Yeah.
You don't know what some act right is, just ask around. You got some buddies that got a few switch whippings when they were growing up.
Yeah.
Claypool needs to start acting like a pro, and I think that was the signal that Pittsburgh's sending. I know I'm not talking a lot about Pickens here, who I do think profiles as a really good athlete. And Pittsburgh, when they draft a receiver, they have a pretty high hit rate. But that's what I took away more from this. I'm not completely out on Claypool, but I do have to admit his value took a dip.
Yeah, it's ironic. Pickens is one that didn't interview well, and another one that might need some act right. But so you bring one in to maybe replace the other. But I think it definitely was a message to Claypool. He's got 2 years left. He's UFA in 2024, so he's gonna be around still. But they definitely kind of set a message there. But now Pickens has got to come in and he's got to act right. So he's got to be the guy to live up to his potential, because I think he could have been a first rounder if he had interviewed a little bit better. Maybe the injuries were some concern, which I don't think there really should be. I think he can be a top receiver, maybe not this year, but by next year, I think he can be a top receiver, especially with Deontay maybe going on, like you said, being in the last year of his contract.
All right, we're going to go 1, 2, 3 on these guys, just each of us giving our take. You'll take 2, I'll take 1 and 3. First one is going to be Breece Hall and Michael Carter. Just a little bit of rapid fire here. I think Carter's upside moves to like a Nyheim Hines role. The only challenge there is Breece Hall is a much better receiver, I think, than Jonathan Taylor is. I'm not willing to say he's a better runner, but he's a better receiver than Jonathan Taylor is. So I think that if you really watch that team last year, even through the injuries, they never fully trusted Carter. Even after he had some big weeks, they went back to a 30-40% snap share. I do think he has some upside, but I saw him go for first-round picks before the draft, and you'll be lucky to get a second. For me, Carter is kind of like Tony Pollard in the sense that he's worth a little bit more than your average handcuff, but not much more.
Right.
The guy I want you to touch on right here is San Francisco backfield. Let's just name it at that. Tyrion Davis-Price was drafted in the 3rd round mark. Draft capital doesn't necessarily matter there because Elijah Mitchell was a later round pick last year and he got the role. You got Debo there as well. How does Tyrion Davis-Price affect San Francisco?
He was the perfect pick for that system. Otherwise, I had him as a 4th rounder, but he was going a lot higher than that because of where he landed, and he's good for that system. To me, it muddles it up a whole lot more as one who rosters Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon. I wasn't going after him because I'm like, why do I need 3 of the same guy? It's just crazy in San Francisco what they do. So I don't know if he hurts anybody. It just muddles it up a lot more. It's going to be a lot harder to know who to start there.
And last one we'll talk about here as our 1, 2, 3 is the New England Patriots running backs, because there's a bunch of them to talk about.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to clean this up as much as I know possible. I think Damian Harris is the biggest loser. I think Ramondre Stevenson, you should go buy and shouldn't panic sell. And I think Pierre Strong is the better of the two running backs they drafted. So just to back up a little bit here, I think Kevin Harris was drafted as a special teams core player. New England does that a lot. A lot of people were like, golly, they drafted another running back. Well, Kevin Harris isn't a receiving back, so that's not what they drafted him for. I think when you look at what he did in special teams at South Carolina, he was very, very good. And really excelled in that role his last year in college. So I think that's why they drafted him. Wouldn't be shocked even if he didn't make the roster, but if he does, it's going to be for that special teams workload that he'll do, a la what Brandon Bolden did for them before, right? I'll explain my Ramondre Stevenson take. And again, this is really just based off what history can tell us. You look at Sony Michel, who had a pretty decent rookie year, got hurt, but by all accounts, people thought could be the guy in that backfield. And then they drafted Damian Harris. And then in Damian Harris's second year, he took over the role. And I think the same thing's going to kind of happen. Damian Harris now going into a contract year. Ramondre Stevenson comes in, and I think he's going to take over that workload this year. And next year, Pierre Strong is going to be the next guy up if Ramondre Stevenson starts acting like he wants money. So that's just what Bill does with running backs. I think I'm stashing Pierre, and let's just do a keep trade cut. I'm keeping Stevenson. I'm trading Davis, and I'm not stashing, or I'm not cutting, but I am stashing Pierre Strong. If I can put him on a taxi, I think he may get value down the line. I actually liked his profile. Wish he would have landed in a different spot.
I have just a little bit of a disagreement, so I'll speak up real quick.
Yeah,
I know we're trying to move on, but I feel like Pierre Strong is the James White replacement. I do like his profile too. I feel like he's been brought there to be the James White replacement. I think, Damian Harris in the last year of his contract, I think Kevin Harris is better than you're giving him credit for. I think he's better than a 6th-round pick. I think he was kind of a steal there. I feel like he can compete with Ramondre. So I feel like they'll move on from Damian Harris. They'll let him walk in free agency. Kevin Harris could be, I think he'd be a good stash. So we'll see who's more on, but I feel like Kevin Harris could be a dark horse there.
As someone who has not just insanely studied these guys, I'm kind of nervous now about my takes, but we'll see how they pan out. I can agree with you though. I liked Pierre Strong, and he's definitely a challenge. I would not be shocked to see Damian Harris get traded for a 3rd or 4th round pick sometime throughout the preseason. So that may be an interesting factor as we move forward.
Yep.
So Mark, we had some other guys on this list, but we're running into some time here. I want you to pick out one thing that you wanted to touch on though. We had some not necessarily panic, but keeping an eye on guys. You did have a bonus question here. So as you're looking through the list, I'll touch on this one. You put, does adding Velus Jones in round 3 to Chicago give Justin Fields enough to work with alongside Darnell Mooney, Byron Pringle, and Cole Kmet? So I'm a Tennessee fan. You see the vintage jersey here, the sign up on the wall and behind me. And I'll say this, Velus Jones, when used correctly, can be a weapon. I didn't, even as a Vols fan, I didn't draft any Velus Jones, mainly because of the age, but because he has to be used perfectly and in the right system. And I'm not sure how that's going to work at the NFL level. He was a guy who was in college a long time. And even going into this year in a very high-powered, very fast offense that Tennessee ran with Josh Heupel, had to be moved around a little bit to finally be that. He's not an exceptional catcher of the football. He's very quick twitch. He's very after the catch. He reminds me of a guy kind of like Jakeem Grant, who I think got traded to the Bears last year. Or why do I feel like he played for the Bears, Mark? Maybe I'm wrong. I know he was on the
Miami.
Dolphins.
Yeah.
He was on the Dolphins, but I feel like I
think he might have. I can't recall right now either.
Okay, I'm not going to look it up.
They had a guy Mims there. They had a bunch of no-name guys,
Yeah. So what I'll say is this: if you have Darnell Mooney or Cole Kmet, which I do in 2 leagues, so this is really just going to sound like I'm boosting it up, and I'm really not. But I think you come out of this draft feeling like a winner a little bit. Kmet seems to be like he's going to still get that target share, and so does Mooney. So I think it's a nice piece for them. I'm curious to see how they use them. I think that Khalil Herbert may get some more run as a receiving back too next year. So just some interesting pieces there. I really thought they should have, as a team, added another receiver, but as a Mooney and Kmet holder, I'm glad they did not.
Yeah, good for the fantasy managers of those guys. I just feel like you look at what the Jets have done to surround Zach Wilson with good talent. The Bears are going in the other direction, it seems like to me. So I'd love to see Velus Jones do well, but it just seems like an odd way to go about things when they didn't have any first rounders, but they were picking high enough. They had a couple of second rounders that were high enough to get some good receivers in there, and they went in other directions, and they brought in Velus Jones in the third. So that just seemed to me like, what are you doing with your, is this your franchise quarterback or not?
Yeah.
Are you tanking? Are you looking at next year? Are you going to trade away Justin? So there's been some regime change there too. So it just, man, I would just hate to be a Bears fan. I think it's going to be tough for them to sit through this season. I think unless these guys just overperform, because Darnell Mooney's not a real big guy, and they don't have, they got Velus Jones there, who's not as polished. He was playing against a lot of younger guys. I'm wondering how much that had to do with it. So yeah, I just, as I drafted in a dynasty startup, I got Fields, was really excited, couldn't wait to see who the Bears took, and then it was just a flop to me. So I was really disappointed. So I'd say no, they're not doing enough. That's my take on it.
In less words, that was my answer too.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're happy as a manager of Mooney and Kmet.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only way I can argue this. I want to ask you about a player. So Mark and a lot of the listeners, watchers may not know this, but you're a guy that really does a lot of deep dive in drafts. I'm in a league with you 2 years in a row and not just fluffing your tail. I've been impressed with some of your later round guys. I tend to take stabs at upside late. You've took some guys that have generated value for you. Not to say they don't have upside, but you've really been able to hit on some of that. And when you see that consistently, it tells you, all right, this guy knows what he's looking for. He's doing his research. So because of that, and because I did no research on the player I'm about to ask you about, tell me about Tyquan Thornton, who was a round 2 pick for New England. They have Jacoby Myers and the free agent signings from last year, Aguilar and Bourne there. What does Thornton do well? I know he's a speedster. And why in the world was he drafted in the second round?
Yeah, it's a head scratcher. I had him as a deeper round target. Was shocked when he went in the second round and thought, oh, wow, I'm not going to be able to sneak this guy in the fourth round anymore, I don't think. I look at him, definitely coming from Baylor is not as impressive, and they've had a bad history of some of the guys that come out of there drafted high that haven't worked out. But I look at him as a guy that's profiles a whole lot like Chris Olave. People are going to say I'm crazy. He profiles a whole lot like Chris Olave. To me, he was even more physical than Chris Olave. Olave is a great route runner. I think when you talked about the second best route runner in Wilson, you were saying Olave was the best, right? So yeah, he definitely profiled as the best route runner, but Tyquan's right there with him and is a little bit more physical. I really feel like he can be that slot guy that they haven't had for the last couple of years. He can be Edelman type. He can be that type that's a tough guy that can get open and just a really good athlete, and he's fast. Bill, everybody thinks he's crazy, but I was high on him and thinking I was going to sneak him in the fourth round. So when he picked him in the second round, I was like, wow, maybe I saw something too, not put myself up there with Bill Belichick.
Maybe me and Bill are brothers. No.
Yeah. So Bill's either going to go down as losing his mind and he needs to move on, or it's going to come to fruition like I thought it could. Just I was thinking it was going to be a lot. I thought his draft capital was going to be lower, and I'd be getting him in the later rounds of rookie drafts. So.
I can't argue anything because I don't know, right? I didn't really do a lot of study on this guy. I knew he was 6'3". I knew he was a slender build, or 6'3" or 6'2", and I knew he was really, really fast. 4.28 40 at the combine. If all those combine measuring was right, since we had a lot of really, really fast guys this year. To hear you say that to hear you say, this is a guy I thought I'd get later, to use that to pivot a little bit. Christian Watson was that guy for me. So a month before our season ended, I was really doing my research on Christian Watson, thinking this is a guy I'm going to steal in the back of the second round or third round, and was super stoked about it. And then he went to the Senior Bowl, and then he went to the Combine, and then he got drafted by the Packers. So you might be onto something there. Some of these guys that height, weight, speed, Christian Watson, just to talk about him a little bit, a lot of people look at him as a height, weight, speed guy, but if you look at how he was used at the college level, even though it was at a lower level, the FCS, they used him like not a gadget player, but like a weapon. I mean, they ran him on sweeps. They put him in the backfield, screen passes. You normally don't see a 6'3", 6'4" guy catching short screens and getting blockers in front of him. He's normally the guy blocking. I also think he's you talked about being physical. I think Christian Watson's one of the better blocking wide receivers in this draft. And I thought when the Packers drafted him, although a lot of people were really excited about that draft pick, I think it leaned into a little bit more. Okay, they're going to run the ball more. They're going to try to set the tone. I think he was a very good pick for a guy like A.J. Dillon, who I think is going to take some more of that workload this year in the running game. Just because, man, he's such a willing and physical blocker. And you had to be that playing at North Dakota State because they run the ball the majority of the time. So he's a guy that even at his draft capital, I'm very intrigued by. He's going late first, early second. He's a guy that has shot up boards kind of like Sky Moore, but I think I like more than Sky Moore. And that's probably shocking to some. So we've talked about a lot of these guys. Mark, I want to thank you for coming on with me, man. It's been a lot of fun. Any parting words for the listeners?
No, thanks for having me on. It was great talk. Great talk.
Well, we got some more names, so we may get a part 2 to this.
Yeah.
And, the off season, as crazy as it's been, I'm sure we'll still have a few more curveballs for us. So the moral of the story is rate a guy how your eyes show you. Don't listen to everything out there. Do your research. If he's your guy, ride with him, because a lot of times talent will outlast situation. Evan Harris, McJammar, Marky Mark. What do you call it in one of our leagues? He's calling you a prophet because you're just picking up on these guys before they hit. I'm not going to go that far. But
no, please don't.
Well, you'll never hear the end of it. Thank you for coming on. We'll get Ian back on soon. Comment down below. Follow us on social media. All of that stuff. Until next time. Good night.
Thank you for listening. Follow For FF's Sake on all social media platforms and search for us wherever you get your podcasts.